Hello, my name is Matthias and welcome to the FPL scope and my team selection video for game week 35. But as always, in my team selection videos, we have to go through the past game week and see what happened in game week 34 this time around. And that was a massive game week, a big double game week for most people. Free hit was used by a lot of people or several people. I was not one of them. I tried to navigate this game week without using a free hit. I did a video earlier today actually where I pretty extensively talked about that decision, how I went into that decision myself, what happened in those game weeks, and what happened with the best managers throughout those game weeks as well. And it's kind of surprising if you watch that video. But anyways, for me, it happened to be a decent game week in the end, I guess. I did get a red arrow again, sadly, but I was just one correct transfer away from having basically just a blank, not a blank game week, but just a game week where I was just at my current rank. Because I was 15k last game week, or in game week 33. Went down 5,000 spots for this game week, and that's mostly down to not having Mateta. But my one transfer that I was originally going to do was Gusto to Trent Alexander-Arnold rather than Virgil van Dijk, and that would have scored me 8 more points, would have gotten me to 109 points, which was my safety score this week. So with that score, I would have had just a gray arrow when I didn't use a free hit in 34, and I would be pretty happy about that. But 101 points, little less than I was hoping for in terms, not in terms of points, but in terms of points compared to the rest of the game week, basically, because this was such a high-scoring game week. I can't believe I'm disappointed with 101 points, but that's just the nature of this game week, because it was a huge double game week, where every differential, basically, or every free hit player especially seemed to do really, really well. But I had some pretty nice scores myself, so let's just go through the team. David Raya in goal, 16 points. Couldn't have asked for a better first game from Arsenal. 2-0 win against Wolves. Well, if it ended 1-0 and Ødegaard hadn't scored that final goal, it would have been a perfect start to the game week for me in terms of Arsenal points. Because David Raya got 3 bonus points. He got 10 points in total from that first game. You'd expect Raya to be just like a 6-point maximum type of goalkeeper, but he got 10 points in the first game, followed that up with 6 points in the second game as well. So a really good goalkeeper for me to have, but obviously there are other Arsenal players I wish I had instead. But at the same time, he is my highest scoring Arsenal player out of the 3 that I have, Raya, Gabriel, and Saka. Let's just finish off with Gabriel and Saka as well. Gabriel, 2 clean sheets, didn't really get that close to scoring either. So 6 points in each of those games for Gabriel, no bonus points. Fair enough, 12 points is more than good enough for me and my team, basically. Saka was pretty disappointing, of course, 2 matches, and he only managed 1 measly assist when Arsenal beat Chelsea 5-0. He managed to get 1 assist towards the end of the match to Havertz as well, who was kind of a big detriment to my rank anyway. So pretty disappointed with Saka, who was my vice-captain. So pretty sad about him only getting 9 points. But at the same time, my 3 Arsenal players actually delivered pretty well this game week. All of them returned 2 clean sheets for Raya and Gabriel, an assist for Saka at least, so 9 points from him. So they at least returned somewhat. But my Liverpool players, my triple up on Liverpool was just absolutely disastrous, obviously. So I did go for Virgil van Dijk rather than Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Trent obviously scored in that first game against Fulham, where they conceded anyway, and then against Everton they conceded again and lost 2-0. Which ended up actually being decent for me because I have another player, as you can see, with 20 points there that I'm going to get to. But Van Dijk, 2 points, awful, got a yellow card, wasn't even close to scoring either. He's been so good in double game weeks previously, but that obviously shouldn't account for anything in a new double game week. That's just happenstance, basically. So, yeah, I went with him over Trent because of security of minutes, basically. But I did have a lot of faith in Trent starting both matches because it was so important for Liverpool. But Liverpool still failed. They won one of the matches against Fulham, barely, basically, because they didn't really impress in that game either. And then they lost against Everton. So 2 points for Virgil van Dijk, but that's still better, or the same, I guess. I had less hopes for him than I did for my attacking players from Liverpool, especially Salah, who was my captain once again. I decided in game week 30 when I brought him in that I was going to just captain him for these 4 next game weeks, 4 really good game weeks on paper. I was really confident in Salah. He's always been good to me in FPL. He's been the best Fans Premier League player of all time, basically. And this is probably his final season, as well as Klopp's final season. So I was hoping to go out with a bang with Salah for the past 4 game weeks, game week 30, until the past 5 game weeks even, game week 30 to game week 34. But once again, he was really disappointing. Didn't really get anything going for Liverpool. But again, I blame mostly Darwin Núñez, who just can't finish the chances that Salah and those guys set up for him. So Darwin Núñez, again, awful. Brought him in game week 31, and he's been nothing but terrible for me. Blocked so many good strikers. Isak, Cunha last week as well would have been nice. Going to Mateta this week, obviously. Mateta got 29 points this game week, and I didn't have him. Huge letdown there. I didn't have to have it. I had Darwin instead because I tripled up pretty early, or doubled up, I guess, with Salah and Darwin pretty early because I thought Darwin would be really good in these matches against the likes of Sheffield United and Brighton and Crystal Palace and Everton and Fulham. Like, it seemed like everything was set up for Salah and Darwin to do really well, especially with Jota being out for a couple of those game weeks. But Jota was back for this game week, game 34, obviously, and Darwin didn't even start in the first game. So Darwin, again, just a huge letdown, been terrible for me this season. He's an FPL troll for sure. He has never really been that good in FPL either. Looking at his scores, it hasn't really been like that double-digit haul machine that we're still expecting somewhat to come from him. So I'm just sick and tired of Darwin, and that might affect my team for Game 35 as well. Obviously, Darwin is not going to be in it because I have my wildcard in hand. But yeah, Darwin 2.0, I don't want any part of him either, most likely. But we'll get to that pretty soon. But yeah, let's get to the rest of the team. I had Sabarni in defense for Bournemouth. I was hoping to have Aït-Nouri ready to play for this game, but obviously he was out for the first game, so I had to bench him. Sabarni comes in, and he got nothing in the first game, but then he got 7 points in the second game, so pretty happy with that, to be honest. 2 away games for Sabarni. Didn't expect him to keep a clean sheet, and he got 7 points, so that's something that happens in double game weeks. You get lucky sometimes in the second game. I think Wolverhampton had a perfectly nice goal ruled out against Bournemouth, so he probably should have lost his clean sheet there, but he managed to get a clean sheet, a bonus point as well, 7 points from Sabarni. Can't really ask for more, I would say, but then again, next to him, I have Jared Brantwaite, who got 20 points, scoring and keeping a clean sheet against Liverpool, on top of having a clean sheet in the first game against Nottingham Forest, quite controversially so with all the penalty shots against Everton. But Brantwaite, the massive, big hero for me this game week. He's been not terrible, he's been awesome for me this whole season, basically. I've had him on the bench for most weeks, but this week, I was set on him starting. I saw past the quotes about him performing light training because that was the whole Everton squad. I said that in the team selection video last week, that he was most likely going to play both matches because he, along with the whole team, played or did light training after coming back from an injury. So pretty happy with him. Expected him to start. He did start both games, and he was just went above and beyond anything that I could ask for him with the 20 points. Also brought in Eze for Son, obviously, to cover that Crystal Palace double up against West Ham and Newcastle. Didn't expect him to do that well. They scored 5 goals against West Ham and then 2 goals against Newcastle. Did not expect 7 goals from both those games from Crystal Palace. If I had expected that, I would have obviously loaded up with another Palace attacker. And that's probably what I should have done. Like, I brought in a defender to play 4-4-2 rather than bringing in an attacker like Mateta, for example, or even Olise, who's the one that I was actually looking to bring in. So I think that was the big mistake for me, but at least Eze got 14 points. He was really, really good. Probably should have had more points in the second game as well. I think he was better than Mateta over the 2 games, to be honest, as an option. But 14 points from him, really, really good. Also had Garnacho subbing on for Haaland. I did expect Haaland sort of to start. That's also why I didn't really bring in Mateta, because I had Haaland. I thought he had a chance of starting at least, which would have been nice against Brighton, because Brighton are a really easy team to score against, especially for those better teams who don't have to play that low block that usually the lesser teams do. But I was hoping to have Haaland for that game, but obviously he was out, and that was confirmed even before the Man United game where Garnacho played against Sheffield United. So I was hoping for a huge score from Garnacho, obviously. He got an assist, happy about that. Can't really be too sad about 5 points off the bench in one single game in a double game week, but he had several big chances to score as well. And if he had scored, he would have gotten 2 bonus points at least, and that would have been a massive help to my rank as well. So kind of sad I didn't get more from Garnacho, but at least I got 5 points from him as well. Then up front, I haven't mentioned Solanke either. Got 8 points, scored 1 penalty in the first game against Aston Villa. Didn't do anything in the second game, so fair enough. Decent game from Solanke, but all in all, pretty disappointed with Solanke from game 30 to 34. I thought he would get more points. I was hoping he would be more of a differential compared to those that had Isak and Watkins on a wildcard and a free hit in 34, but instead, Isak has just been absolutely terrific between game 30 and 33. And for those of you on free hits who had Isak from 30 to 33 and then Mateta in 34, you've gained so many points on me compared to what I had in Solanke and Darwin. And especially also if you had Watkins, if you managed to keep him throughout this period as well, or even had him on the free hits and he got 9 points. Well, only 1 more point than Solanke still, but Watkins has been terrific as well lately. So my strikers have really let me down. And obviously on the bench, Palmer, who I was always going to bench anyway, so the fact that he didn't play didn't really affect me that much. Aït-Nouri was out for the first game. He was also benched for that reason. And then Haaland, the auto sub. Dubravka as well on the bench, and he got 2 points. Didn't really do anything in that game either. Against Crystal Palace, even though they were close to getting a clean sheet against Crystal Palace. But then Mateta happened. He scored 2 goals, and yeah, he was just fantastic. He was the biggest miss of this game for me. If I had Mateta, obviously, rather than Garnacho, if I had done Haaland to Mateta, which I could have done, I guess, if I had known 100% that Haaland was going to be out. If I'd done that transfer instead, I obviously would have had a really nice game week, and it would have been even closer. I would have actually been in the top 10k at this moment in time. But currently, I'm outside looking in with 18 points behind the top 10k. Pretty much where I've been for most of this latter half of the season. I had a couple game weeks where I was getting closer to the top 10k. I was actually in the top 10k for one game week, and then I dropped out again in these last 2 game weeks. So I do have some ground to cover, but I do also have my wildcard left that I'm going to use now in Game Week 35, and my bench boost that I'm going to use in Game Week 37. So I'm hoping with the ideal final 4 game weeks of the season that I'm going to get into the top 10k. I think I have a decent chance of doing that. It's just a matter of getting everything right. But this game week, 101 points. Red arrow, obviously, I'm never happy about that, but at the same time, could have been so much worse. I could have been in the 60s and 70s. Actually, in a couple of my mini leagues, I went so far past the second place guy in my league, the brother of Kevin, who's my co-host on the FPL Score podcast. He had a terrible game week where he ended up with like 56 points or something. So in my one like money league, I actually am now clear at the top, and I'm going to win that league. So in that way, it was actually a really good game week for me in terms of the mini leagues, but overall, could have been better, obviously, with all the free hitters getting so many points that I wish I had, especially from Mateta and Ben White and Havertz and those guys. But yeah, that was pretty much it. But speaking of free hit, I did also make a free hit draft last week in the team selection video for Game Week 34. So let's see how that did as well. There is one big miss here as well, obviously, that we'll get to. So let's just look at that team. And interestingly enough, the free hit team actually only scored 5 points more than my own team. So maybe I was kind of lucky that I didn't free hit in 34, I guess, because I only would have gained 5 points from that. But I'm not sure. If I was actually free hitting in 34, maybe my mind would be different, and I'd cover myself with someone like Mateta, who was a pretty popular player this week. But I honestly just thought that Olise would be a better, higher upside pick just because of their history in FPL. Olise has been like one of the best performing players this season in total, and Mateta only had 1 double-digit haul in his whole FPL career before this game week, where he obviously had 16 points and 13 points respectively in the 2 games. 29 points, huge score from Mateta. So not having him is obviously a big miss here as well. Completely just went against him. I probably should have just tripled up on the Palace attack as well. Would have probably been the right play, especially seeing as I was pretty 50-50 between Henderson and Pickford. So obviously, if I played Pickford over Henderson, that's 13 points. And if I would have had Mateta as well as a striker instead of Olise, I would have gained a lot more points from that as well. So I could have had a lot more points, but 106 points on the free hit, not the best, obviously, on the lower end of where people got their free hit scores, basically. So again, maybe I'm just not cut out for this free hit business, because I tend to not do so well in the free hits compared to what I do with my regular team, which is more like a long-term perspective, I guess. But yeah, Henderson in goal with 5 points, got that own goal in the first game. Was kind of unlucky to concede. The first goal was like almost offside, and then the second goal was obviously a big mistake. Apart from that, West Ham didn't really have much in that game, so they easily could have the clean sheet in that game. Second game, they obviously get a clean sheet against Newcastle, which was kind of more lucky. I think normally they would keep a clean sheet against West Ham and concede against Newcastle. They should have had a penalty against them as well, most likely, which Henderson could have saved, to be honest. But yeah, I had Pickford on the bench though with 18 points. And Tarkowski on the bench. I probably should have had Branthwaite there as well, but I think Tarkowski was just a more secure pick, I guess, because there was that slight doubt about Branthwaite's availability, I guess. But yeah, in defense, Gabriel as well. I went with him rather than White. Again, not the best decision. Going with double Liverpool defense rather than double Arsenal defense was also the wrong decision. Should have gone with someone like Jota instead of midfield rather than Saka, for example, and had a different player in defense. Had Ben White rather than Virgil van Dijk. And you'll see that when it comes to the best team of this game week, which I'm going to go to the Manager of the Week, which is the next segment. You're going to see the exact changes that I could have easily made for this free team to be a major success. But yeah, Trent was my favorite differential in defense, 10 points, which makes it even more agonizing with the fact that I went for Virgil van Dijk instead. Because I was pretty set on going with Trent Alexander-Arnold, and then that slight doubt about the playing time for Trent just managed to creep in. My former experiences of him being subbed off in the 58th and 59th minute, and just my bad experiences with Trent this whole season with some injuries and stuff just made me doubt him just enough to go to Virgil van Dijk instead. But I did have a lot of faith in Trent. I did expect him to play both games, but it was just a slight bit of doubt that made me go without him on my own team. But for the free team, at least, I had him as my favorite differential, so hopefully I swayed someone to bring in Trent rather than the likes of Robertson and Virgil van Dijk, who scored obviously a lot less points. Salah still my captain here, still a disappointment. Saka still a disappointment with 9 points as well. I did have Eze as my vice captain here though, so I don't know why I didn't went to Saka as my vice captain for my own team, but that's where we are, I guess. But I think Eze was a nice differential punt. Obviously, I said that before the game week as well, that he was a nice differential punt compared to Salah. He ended up scoring a lot more points, obviously, 3 points compared to 14 points. That was an 11-point swing as well if you captain someone like SA, which would have helped you a lot. But yeah, I'm happy that I had SA. I'm pretty happy that I had Elise as well. I expected him to play both games. He played only one of the 2 games, and he easily could have had some points in the second game as well. So pretty happy with the Elise pick, but obviously that comes at the cost of having Mateta, which I should have had instead, obviously. But the real thing I should have done was just triple up on the attack, because they played against pretty poor defenses in West Ham and Newcastle, and 2 teams that also can score. West Ham and Newcastle, they have enough firepower to score in those games, so should have just tripled up on the Palace attack, to be honest. Kai Havertz, though, I was really happy with. I was pretty adamant that he was a really, really good pick to have. That's why I kind of wanted to double up on the Arsenal mids, because I couldn't really go without Saka. I felt like it was too much of a risk with him being the penalty taker and all. So easy for him to get a high score just from the fact that he's the penalty taker. But I also really, really like Havertz. I thought he was going to be really good for this game week. I think he's been a tremendous FPL asset for like the past 10, 12 game weeks. He's been absolutely amazing. Most people should probably have had him at some point. And even now as well, he is still a decent option for the next few game weeks. But obviously Arsenal don't have a double game week fixture, so it's hard to choose him over the likes of Gordon, Fernandes, Foden, Son, Johnson, De Bruyne, all these guys that have double game weeks. It's hard to go with someone like Havertz, but I still think he has some value for even the next few game weeks. But in this double game week as well, it looked pretty bad. Didn't get anything in the first game for Arsenal against Wolves. Took a long time for him to get going in the Chelsea game as well, but he ended up with 2 goals there, 2 beautiful passes all around from Ødegaard, who was the man of the match in that game as well. But Havertz with a big 17 points, which was really nice to see. Up front I had Solanke, and as a differential compared to Mateta, I went with Semenyo instead, because I wanted Olise instead in midfield, like I mentioned a couple times. And Semenyo, to his credit, he didn't start in the first game, which was kind of a disappointment for me on the free hit sort of thing, as one of my differentials there, Semenyo. But he did play in the second game, and he did score, and he actually ended up outscoring Solanke in the end. So Semenyo wasn't that bad of a pick, so I'm pretty happy about mentioning him as a pick as well. Obviously not on as opposed to having Mateta, obviously. That was the big miss that I had for this free hit draft. On the bench, like I mentioned, Pickford and Tarkowski with huge scores. Watkins was actually one of my favorite strikers as well, despite him having a single game week, because he's absolutely amazing. He had 2 assists and got 9 points. Well done from him. And then Aït-Nouri I just had on the bench just because I felt like if he was supposed to start 1 or perhaps 2 of the games, he would have been a tremendous player to have. So I wish I had a fully healthy Aït-Nouri for those 2 games, but that wasn't meant to be. Wolves have struggled with injuries, and that sort of hampered the appeal of the Wolverhampton players in these game weeks leading up to the double game week. But Aït-Nouri with 2 points only, getting a start in the second game and not really doing much, I guess, against Bournemouth. So as basically the team, 106 points, around 1.4 million game week rank for my free draft. Not the best, obviously, one of the worst or one of the lesser, I guess, free hit drafts for this past game week. But at the same time, I feel pretty good about some of the players that I did mention, like Havertz and Olise, that weren't really, and Semenyo for that matter, who weren't really mentioned that much, and Watkins, who weren't really considered as that big of options, but I did really like them. So yeah, not too unhappy about my selection, but obviously the Mateta thing was a big swing against me, both in my regular team and in the free team. So a bit disappointed with that. But let's take a look at the best possible, not the best possible, but the best manager of the week for the FPL Scope Mini League for Game Week 34. And surprise, surprise, it's someone that used a free hit in Game Week 34. So this is the manager, Martin Elvold, who's a fellow Norwegian. So hopefully you have enjoyed this channel. I think I might have interacted with you in the comments before. I'm not sure. If you're watching this video, please tell me down in the comments down below how you're feeling after such an amazing game week, obviously. You've now gone up to 18k overall, so you're ahead of me in the table by 3 points. Overall, really nice game week for you, 7.9k overall this game week with 165 points, a massive score. But if you compare this team to my free team, it's obviously not that different. It's just like on the margins. You see Pickford rather than Henderson, Ben White over Virgil van Dijk, Jota over Saka, and Mateta over Semenyo. That's basically the 4 differences between my free draft and your free draft. But that's a massive 59 points, mostly because of Mateta's 29 points, which was absolutely amazing. The other thing about this team, which is interesting, is for a double game week, 165 points, and the captain only has 6 points. That's kind of crazy. Imagine if you had captain Mateta instead, who got 29 points compared to the 3 points that Salah got. That's 26 more points. Would have gotten you close to that 200 magical game week points mark, which is kind of crazy. But still, a fantastic team, obviously. Pickford in goal was the better choice, or the better outcome at least, compared to Henderson. Really, really nice heroics from Pickford. Had several huge saves as well. He was terrific in these 2 games, Pickford, to keep those clean sheets. It's well deserved that he got the clean sheets. Ben White, obviously the informed Arsenal defender. I wish I would have gone with him as well, but I just felt like I needed Saka, and I really liked Havertz as well. So yeah, just a really nice pick. Could have gone with Ben White over Gabriel as well, personally. But yeah, Ben White's been fantastic. Got a little bit lucky with the second goal there where he tried to cross it and the ball went into the top bins. But still, 26 points, a massive score for him. And then Mateta with the 29 points, obviously, which was a real help for this team with 165 points now on the free hit. Obviously, really should be really happy about the free hit strategy in Game 34. Massive score. And now you're going back to your old team, and let's take a look at how that team is looking for Game 35, because the Manager of the Week segment, we not only look at the Manager of the Week from this past game week and see how they did in the past game week, but also look ahead to Game Week 35 and try to give you some tips on what to do for the next game week. And if you didn't already, if you want to be a Manager of the Week, you can join the FPL Scope Mini League with the league code V9JT0D, and if you're the highest scoring manager of a particular game week, we'll look at your team for that game week and the next game week, which is what we're going to do with Martin Ellevold's team right now. So this is the team, back to reality, back to basics, with the free hit team gone, the old team back. But obviously this is a manager that wildcarded actually quite a long time ago, Game Week 21, if that's correct, if my graphics are correct there. And still has a really good team, I think, for this upcoming game week. I don't think this team is bad at all. I think it has a lot of good players, but there's obviously a couple of things you can do. You have 0.3 in the bank, not too much money, but there's also a couple of players that are ready to be shipped out. Mainly, I think, Bukayo Saka, who plays Spurs away. Pretty tough game, but at the same time, Spurs do concede a lot of goals, so maybe Saka is still really good. But there are just 2 really good options there with Bruno Fernandes and Anthony Gordon, who I really, really like. You also have Salah as well, who's another player you could potentially sell. But I think Salah against West Ham, who showed how bad they can be defensively, that could be a massacre for Salah. He could score a lot of goals, as has been the case for the several past game weeks. That's probably why a lot of people are selling him at this point, because he's just been in terrible form. But we know Salah. He can get a penalty, he can get an assist, he can get a hat-trick for that matter against West Ham. I think he's actually a pretty good player. I would not be too keen on selling him straight away now, Salah, if I already had him. He's also a really nice placeholder for De Bruyne if you want to get De Bruyne next week, potentially. He's a really good player. Having that triple up on the City attack, I think, will be a nice benefit to you. So you have that chance here as well to go from Salah to De Bruyne. You could do that this game week as well, but I think Gordon and Fernandes are just better for this game week than De Bruyne is. And potentially better than Salah as well, but especially Saka. I think Salah has a better chance of scoring against West Ham than Saka does against Spurs, because Spurs are just a better team than West Ham. But those are the 2 main players you could potentially sell. Obviously, you have Darwin Núñez as well, who I'm just so sick and tired of, so fed up with. He doesn't have the whole history that I have with Salah back in the day that helps him. I have never had any good performances from Darwin, basically. So yeah, Darwin to Isak is obviously something you can do as well. You don't have any Newcastle players. You should probably do something about that. So that's why I like Gordon in. I like Isak in. Could potentially look at a defender in as well. You obviously have Gabriel playing against Spurs away. Not an ideal fixture, but at the same time, Gabriel and Arsenal can get points against anyone. So I don't really feel too bad about that defense as well. I think your defense is fine. Doughty, obviously, it's not ideal. You want to switch him out before Game Week 37 because you still have your bench boost left, obviously. So you could do that, but you don't have much money in the bank. So you probably need to get that money somehow instead. So yeah, Saka to Gordon or Fernandes, I think, is probably the ideal transfers. I think both Gordon and Fernandes have really, really good chances of scoring a lot of points this game week. Fernandes is in terrific form. Gordon at home is always super good. And the one game Gordon actually did well in away from home was against Sheffield United, where Newcastle obviously won 8-0 last time. So that should be a really good game for Gordon. So I really like Gordon. I really like Fernandes, but maybe not so much for the long term as much as I like Isak as well. I think De Bruyne is actually the player that I like the most for the long term, but for the immediate future, I think Gordon and Fernandes are the 2 best picks, potentially also Isak. But again, Darwin could also score points against West Ham. He could easily score a hat-trick now to make my life even more miserable as a West Ham fan. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see that happen either. But yeah, several options there. I think your team is really, really good for what it's worth. I think you're really well set up for the final few game weeks. It's going to be tough for me to beat you, even with a wildcard. So yeah, really nice team. I think Gusto as well. You have him on the bench. He's out injured, or he has to be on the bench, I guess, because he's injured now. Would have been ideal if he was fit to play and you could play him over Gabriel, but it doesn't seem like that at this moment that Gusto is going to be ready to play. So yeah, he's on the bench, and I think it's not too bad to have him on the bench either. Obviously, Nicholas Jackson would be nice to have. You could do a -4 where you sell Gusto and bring in Nicholas Jackson for Darwin, for example. You could do that, get a Newcastle defender, for example, Fabian Schär, if you can afford that, for Gusto, and then sell Darwin to someone like Nicholas Jackson. But I don't know. Selling Darwin to buy Jackson, it just seems like you're swapping out one thing with the same thing, basically. Just the fact that the same thing, aka Nicholas Jackson, has a double game week. But it is a nice double game week for Jackson, Aston Villa away and Spurs at home, and that's basically what I'm struggling with my own team as well on the wildcard. So yeah, those are some options for you. Several options you can go for, actually, more than just the 3 that I've listed there. I've talked about some of them now as well. So a lot of things you could do. Also, I should mention Haaland is on your bench, or in my suggestion at least, is on your bench, but now he's back in full training apparently. Still has a couple of days to recover fully to play against Nottingham Forest, so it could easily be the chance that he is a better starter here, and Darwin would be the one that I would replace, or Saka, I guess. You could also just bench Saka and Darwin and just get another game week to get another transfer and have more of an overview for the next game week. But I think there are some nice options in Gordon and Fernandes, especially that you want to jump on straight away rather than Saka. And then you can buy Gordon and Fernandes for Saka, and you can swap out Darwin for Haaland as a starter, and you'll have one of the best teams potentially that you can have this week. Because yeah, that's the next segment. Basically, we're going to talk about the best free hit draft for Game 35. If you're only looking at this upcoming game week, what is the best team to have? And it's going to be pretty similar to this, like a lot of the same players that Martin Edevold has in his team. So let's take a look at my ideal free hit team for Game 35 as well. So this is the free hit team. It's a bit different, obviously. A lot more Newcastle players because they play Sheffield United at home and they're in terrific form. They did lose 2-0 against Crystal Palace, but I think they were as good as, if not better than, Crystal Palace, who are also in really good form. So I think at home especially, they've been much better at home this season, Newcastle, against Sheffield United, who they destroyed 8-0 last time. I think tripling up on them seems like a really good idea. So Fabian Schär in defense, I think he has the highest upside out of the defenders that are confirmed to start, or most likely will start. Trippier would be the ideal pick to have if he was fully fit to play, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be making this game week. So Fabian Schär, I think, is just a better option than Burn if you have the money. So yeah, he's my pick in defense there. Gordon, obviously, really, really good. Like I mentioned, 12 points against Sheffield United away. That's his only huge haul away from home this season. So can't imagine what he can do at home against Sheffield United this week either. So I really like him. And Isak at home to Sheffield United. We saw Callum Wilson come back this past game week. He came on against Crystal Palace. So that's maybe like a downside to Isak. But Isak played still pretty offensively and could have had an assist in that game easily after Wilson came on as well. And he's going to play pretty attackingly. It was quite interesting to see Callum Wilson came on and Gordon and Isak still stayed on the pitch. So I think that all 3 could coexist, and Isak has like a supporting striker sort of role where he's not going to be hampered too much, I think. He's not going to be fully out wide on the wing like he was last season because Gordon is so good on the left there for Newcastle. So I think that triple up is really, really nice. Then obviously we have the double game week teams with Chelsea and Spurs, and I only have 5 players from those teams in the starting lineup. I have Vicario on the bench. It's just as a backup option in case Petrovic all of a sudden gets dropped or something like that. But it's just about the Spurs players. I don't really like the Spurs fixtures that much. Arsenal, I don't really think a double game week with Arsenal in it is that big of a double game week because you're facing basically the best defense in the league who are most likely going to score as well. So I'm not sure about the upside there for any of the Spurs players in general. So I think Pedro Porro is nice. He's on set pieces, obviously. He could get attacking returns. He could get clean sheets. He has like that double chance of getting points. So I quite like him for that reason. Son obviously is a given on any draft, any free hit draft, free transfers. If you don't have Son at this point, you should probably get him because he's just that type of guy, and he has also shown in the past that he can win and score in these big matches as well. And Chelsea away should also be a decent game for Spurs to get some goals. So I don't mind the likes of Richarlison as a punt. I think if he's fit to play and he's going to start for Spurs, he's going to be a really nice differential. He's the one that I'm actually the most likely to go for. Brennan Johnson is another decent asset as well from Spurs. Could go with someone like Timo Werner, but I think that's really risky with Brennan Johnson fully fit, Kulusevski fully fit, and Richarlison fully fit. So you could go with someone like that. You could go with another defender potentially. Van de Ven like that. I don't know. I just prefer the other players because I don't think that game against Arsenal is that lucrative for the Spurs players basically. When it comes to Chelsea, I think Palmer and Nicholas Jackson for this game week in particular are really, really good. Not so sure about Jackson long term. Like I'm not 100% sold on him long term because Nkunku is on his way back. And I quite like Gusto for a future game week, but Gusto's obviously injured for this week, and Kunku's still injured for this week. So Nicholas Jackson is safe to start both these games against Aston Villa and Spurs. I think those are two really good fixtures for him, so I think he could be a really nice player to have this game week. Palmer, obviously, captaincy choice, easy choice. He's been so good. Apart from the illness that he had last time against Arsenal, you can see Chelsea crumble without him. And now he actually got his rest. His legs will be fine. He's back from illness. He's fully fit to play. Absolutely no reason to captain anyone else than Palmer, I think. Even Son, because like I mentioned, Son plays that Arsenal fixture, which is really tough. So Palmer, the easy captaincy choice for me. And the final Chelsea player that I have is Petrovic in goal. Don't really have too high hopes for that for those two games. Aston Villa and Spurs are two teams that usually tend to score, but maybe he saves a penalty, maybe gets a lot of saves, maybe he gets a cheeky clean sheet in one of the games and gets a lot of points. We have seen Chelsea actually do pretty well in the past against Aston Villa, so I think that would be the hope for him to get a clean sheet against Aston Villa potentially. Not 100% sold on that as a player, but at the same time, it's a double game week, so he has a lot of chances to score points there, Petrovic. And I don't really trust any other Chelsea player apart from that, with Gusto out as well. So that's pretty much the double game week players that I have in the team as well. My final defensive spot, I have Ait-Nouri. I think he has a really nice chance against Luton at home. I think that should be a really nice game for Wolverhampton in general, and Ait-Nouri especially, who's been so good in the past as well, before his slight injury issue now. He plays super offensively, and yeah, he's just been a really good player for me in the past few game weeks in FPL. So I really like Ait-Nouri for this game as well against Luton at home. Obviously not the best long-term pick. They have two really tough matches in game 36 and 38, but for this game week in particular, I think he's still really good. So if you have him already, no reason at all to sell him or anything like that. Keep him for this game against Luton. I think he could be a really nice differential option in defense there. Bruno Fernandes has been the informed player of the whole Premier League, basically, apart from Palmer, obviously. Plays Burnley at home. I think that's a fantastic fixture for him to get even more points. These are the type of sub-fixtures where Fernandes is really good, where Man United can actually dictate play and be the best team on the pitch, at least sometimes, because you never know with Man United. But I think that's a really nice game for Bruno Fernandes, who's in the form of his life. So it makes all the sense in the world to have him in your team for this game week as well, if you can, especially if you're on a free hit in 35 for some reason. I don't know why you would free hit in 35, but if you're feeling the high of the game week 34 free hit and you want to free it now in 35 instead because you didn't free it last game week, then maybe you should free it this week, even though I think 37 or 38 would probably be better times to use the free it if you have it still available. But yeah, Bruno Fernandes at home to Burnley, can't really ask for a much better fixture, can't really ask for a much better form player as well, so I think he makes a lot of sense. Foden as well, he's also been absolutely terrific. He obviously didn't play in 2 games in a row there, he was on the bench and didn't come on. But he's fully fit to play, he's fully rested, he's going to start against Nottingham Forest, and you really want probably more than just Foden as a cover for this match. So you could go with someone like Guardiola in defense, but it's just hard to know who's going to start in defense. Kyle Walker had 2 assists last time, was really good in attacking last time for City, so maybe Kyle Walker could be someone you go for. Obviously Haaland is on the bench. If he's ready to start, like I said, I think he might be a better option than Nicholas Jackson, despite Jackson having 2 fixtures. Or potentially Isak, but yeah, Haaland is also obviously a really good player, especially if he's fit to play, but there's still a doubt about him being ready to play at least for 90 minutes. Maybe he gets 60 minutes, maybe he gets 30 minutes, who knows. He could still do damage in that time, but Haaland has been kind of a low-key disappointing asset this season, so not super sold on Haaland, but if he's ready to play, if he's confirmed to play especially, he could also be a fantastic pick, obviously. Diogo Dalot, attacking fullback for Man United against Burnley, seems like a good deal for me, but Burnley do also score quite a few goals. They scored 4 goals last time, I think, against Sheffield United, and they do tend to score at least 1 goal per game, so not 100% sold on him, but still, he's an attacking player playing for not the best team in Man United, but a team with a really good fixture at least. So I think the lot is decent as well. And then Brantwaite, who I just think is a terrific option regardless of the game week, basically. Brentford isn't the easiest game to keep a clean sheet against. They scored 5 goals or whatever last game week, so maybe it's not the best game for Brantwaite, but I do have a lot of faith in him, so I don't mind him either. But obviously, that could easily be someone like Guardiola or Walker or one of the City defenders that could potentially play. Could also have Ederson in goal for that matter as a safer option than Petrovic or Vicario. So several City options you could go with. De Bruyne obviously as well is another really good option if he's starting against Nottingham Forest. So yeah, probably a lack of City options in this free draft, but at the same time there are so many good players this game week. So it's really hard to choose the ideal free hit draft basically. The team value of this team is 103.5, so you can probably afford it with your budget. If you can't, it's easy to just downgrade a lot to Maguire, for example, downgrade Vicario to a goalkeeper who's like Pickford, for example, who's going to play, but most likely you're not going to need the backup goalkeeper anyway. You could also downgrade Haaland for that matter. There's still a lot of ways to downgrade if you can't afford this team. So you should easily be able to afford this team. When it comes to the players I own from this team, it's still a question mark because I am wildcarding. I don't really know how many of these players I will have, but it's pretty similar, as you'll see as we go on to discuss the final segment of this video, which is the main reason of this video as well, which is my team selection for Game Week 20 or Game Week 35, I should say. And that's coming up right now. So this is my team currently as it stands on the wildcard. Obviously, it's pretty similar, if you can see, compared to the free hit draft, for a good reason, because Game Week 35 is one of the last, it's one of 4 final game weeks to end this season, basically. So every free hit or every like single game week now is going to look closer to a perfect wildcard draft, because it's going to be just fewer game weeks to go off from. There's basically only 4 games left to play. So my wildcard team is going to be pretty similar. It's going to have a huge emphasis on Game Week 35, obviously, a huge emphasis on Game Week 37, the 2 double game weeks that we have left of this season. And this is basically my team currently. There are some things, though, I need to sort out. The one main thing is Nicholas Jackson, who I've mentioned a couple times in this video, not being 100% sold on him. And that's probably mostly down to Darwin just being so bad and Nicholas Jackson being a similar type of striker, getting a lot of chances, being just incredibly frustrating overall to watch. Missing huge chances. He's just lacking something in front of goal, which is kind of crazy after he was so efficient for Villarreal to end last season. But yeah, I'm not 100% sold on Jackson, and to be honest, I didn't really figure to have him in my team until I had to transfer him in, just because of the price changes. And when I did that, I saw his fixtures: Aston Villa away, Spurs at home. On paper, 2 teams that are pretty good, or really good actually, going for their Champions League spots, the Champions League spot in 4th place. Are 2 really good teams, but there are also 2 teams that do concede a lot of goals. And I could see a lot of goals both ways in this game, actually. I could see Chelsea concede a lot of goals as well. Hence why I don't have any Chelsea defenders in this wildcard draft as well. So I could see a lot of goals both ways for Palmer, for Jackson, for all those guys from Aston Villa and Spurs as well. So if that's the case, I think Jackson has a decent chance of scoring a lot of points. He had a hat-trick against Spurs earlier in the season, obviously. That was a bit different because Spurs had 2 players sent off in that game. So that was, he had like 1,800 chances in that game, Jackson. So him getting a hat-trick was kind of disappointing in that game, to be honest. But they're probably not going to play against linemen once again, but they are going to play against the high line of Spurs. So I do really like Jackson for this game, obviously. I had him in the free hit team. But like I mentioned, on the long-term spectrum of this, I'm not so sure. I think Nkunku is going to be back before the end of the season, going to eat into the minutes of Jackson. I do also kind of want to have Gusto for Game Week 37 for that double as well. He's also another like future player that I want to have in my squad, obviously. And he is someone that I have in this squad. I would also like to have Petrovic most likely. So there are some different changes that I could do to this team. The other big issue for me is who to choose in midfield, because Palmer, Son, and Foden, they are pretty much locks. I'm going to have them regardless. Gordon is pretty close to a lock as well for this game in particular, at least against Sheffield United. I just have a lot of faith in him. And I also really like Bruno Fernandes for this game as well. There's something, I feel like I need to have De Bruyne. I think he's going to be like one of the biggest differentials for anyone wildcarding this week. So I'm really struggling between having either Bruno Fernandes or De Bruyne. Obviously, I have 2.4 million in the bank, so I can afford either one of those guys with this current team. But I also kind of want to downgrade Nicholas Jackson for this reason. To downgrade him to Joao Pedro, that saves me a couple bucks there as well. And if I also go from Onana to to Petrovic as well, because I have the extra Chelsea spot, I do have enough money to potentially go from Gordon to De Bruyne next week instead, because Gordon has away games. He has 3 out of the 4 final games of the season for Gordon are away from home, where he's been pretty bad this whole season. And with Callum Wilson back fit, Isak ready to play and stuff, I'm not so sure about Gordon long term. But for this game week, I think it's pretty much essential, not essential, but like pretty much like one of the guaranteed to be one of the best high scoring players this game week. So I just really like that option of potentially going from Gordon to De Bruyne. Maybe if Bruno Fernandes looks absolutely amazing against Burnley as well, I could want to feel the need to keep him as well. Obviously, with this draft, I do only have 2 City players with Foden and Haaland, and that's for a reason as well, because I do want De Bruyne in that 3rd spot, ideally. But potentially also I could go with just the 2 City players and then have my pick out of the defenders in Game Week 37. Because in Game Week 37, Man City have the first game of the game week, I think, against Fulham. So we're going to get team leaks that game. And we're going to know if Guardiola is starting or if Walker is starting or if they're benched, for example. So it could also be a nice jumping on point if I just want to continue with the season with Fernandes and Gordon rather than De Bruyne. That could be a nice game week for me to jump on someone like Guardiola or Walker if they're confirmed to start in that first game against Fulham, which would help me a lot in that game week, because that's obviously the big game for City in that game week as well. They play Fulham and then they play Spurs as well in that same game week, and the Fulham game is probably the ideal fixture to have the defender. So if I get a confirmed starter there, either in Walker or Guardiola, that I can be fully 100% sure about starting in that game week, or not 100% with the leaks these days, but I want to leave that potential option as well open. But my ideal midfielder or my ideal third City player is De Bruyne. I want to triple up on City attack because they're going to try to score 6, 7, 8 goals per game because they want to catch up with Arsenal when it comes to the goal difference as well. If they do get a draw in one of these games, they need the goal difference to be better than Arsenal. So I don't have any Arsenal attackers in this team either, which is kind of sad because I think Arsenal would just continue to score a lot of goals because they want to get that goal difference as good as they possibly can in each game as well. So I think Arsenal and City ideally would be the 2 teams to target, which ironically would be nicer if Arsenal hadn't doubled in 34 and were about to double in 37, because I would be able to double up on both Arsenal players and City players for this game week. But no Arsenal players is also kind of, no attacking Arsenal players at least, is also kind of a drawback. But I don't know. I do have Gabriel in defense because I don't really like that many defenders, so having an Arsenal defender or potentially 2, I have flirted with the thought of having Ben White as well on top of Gabriel, but having an Arsenal defender at least for game week 36 and potentially also game week 38 if I don't sell them in game week 37 to accommodate another double game week player, that is pretty appealing to me. So Gabriel is pretty certain in my squad. I think Pedro Porro now as well is also going to be pretty much assured in my squad. I wasn't too sure about it when I made the wildcard drafts earlier in the week, but the more time has gone on, I'm more certain about him. Both him being fit to play, he's now confirmed to be ready to play for this game or these games in game week 35. Also the fact that he's back on most set pieces now, that's when he's at his most dangerous. He's also the one Spurs player that I actually like apart from Son and potentially Richarlison and Brendan Johnson as well. So I don't mind him. Actually, there's another thing. I might leave out Vicario just because I want that third Spurs spot open as well, because I like those 2 final game weeks for them in game 37 against Burnley at home and Man City at home, and then the final game against Sheffield United away. I really like that and would like to have like a Spurs spot open for that as well, potentially. But Pedro Porro I really like as my defender on top of Gabriel. I think those 2 are pretty much locked. I'm going to have one Newcastle defender at least in either Dan Burn or Fabian Schär. At the moment, I just feel like I need the money, so I'm going to go with Burn rather than Schär. I do prefer Schär. He tends to score a lot of goals towards the end of the season. And but he doesn't really have the best underlying numbers compared to Burn. It's pretty similar, but at the same time, Fabian Schär is just a much better finisher. So I don't really think if you have the choice between Schär and Burn and you have the money to do that, if you can accommodate either player, I think Fabian Schär is by far the better pick, or not by far, but he's like the better pick out of the 2, more likely to score. But I need to save the money basically, so I'll go with Burn in this draft. Also, Branthwaite is another player that I just want to have, despite him not having any double game weeks. He has really, really good fixtures towards the end of the season. Plays Sheffield United at home in game 37 when I'm going to bench boost most likely. I don't mind having him for that game week either, and I could play him this game against Brentford, next game against Luton away, and then game 37 against the Crystal Palace at home as well. But the one downside with Everton is the fact that I might actually keep their place pretty soon, and maybe they go on vacation, like mentally, from that point. So maybe Branthwaite isn't the best, but I still feel good about him from what he's done this past or this season, and especially this past game week with the 20 points as well. Gusto is another player who's a bit of an uncertainty. Obviously, he is out injured. It doesn't seem likely to be fit for these games. Seems like he's going to be aiming for the West Ham game in game 36. Which would be nice to have him in, but I still have decent defenders for that game week as well. In Newcastle, I think I have a decent game week that game week. Gabriel for Arsenal have a nice game, and Branthwaite also has a nice game against Luton. But I don't really need Gusto until game week 37, but I think he's going to be a really nice option in game week 37. It depends again on the fitness of Reece James as well, who's going to play right back there. If Gusto is back fully fit, I expect him to start both games in game week 37. Which would be really nice. It would be nice to have like the ideal Chelsea defender from that game. Really cheap defender in Gusto as well, which allows me to have more money for the likes of De Bruyne, for example. But I'm not 100% sure about Gusto on my team either, obviously. The Chelsea players are really hard to pick apart from Palmer, obviously. Petrovic is also someone that I had as my goalkeeper for most of the week in my wildcard drafts, but currently leaning towards having Nicholas Jackson and Gusto instead. But I could very well drop one of them for Petrovic, I think. Apart from that, don't really expect any other Chelsea players to be interesting, really. Madueke has played a lot lately. Maybe he's a chance in midfield, but at the same time, midfield's always stacked. It's really hard to fit in midfielders in this game. And Nkunku, obviously, if he was fully fit to play, I think he'd be a super nice differential. And I do have some thoughts about having money in the bank as well. Not potentially just for De Bruyne, but also for Trippier if he comes back in defense to be ready to play for double game week 37 and potentially game week 36, or potentially game week 35 as well if that's the case. I don't think it's likely though. But Trippier would be a really nice differential in defense. Upgrading Burn to Trippier would be really, really nice. And Nkunku as well is someone that I'm also liking the look of, and he's pretty similarly priced to Jackson. But obviously Nkunku, having been out so long, you don't really expect him to start both double game week fixtures. So he's probably going to be more of an annoyance for Nicholas Jackson than he's going to be like an asset to have in FPL as well. So yeah, a lot of things to choose from in this game week. The goalkeepers, I don't really like any of the goalkeepers really. Petrovic is probably my favorite goalkeeper, but at the same time, I might have to not have him to accommodate other Chelsea players. I would actually start Onana against Burnley at home over Vicario against Arsenal and Chelsea. Maybe that's a stupid decision. Maybe you should go with the two tough double game week fixtures rather than the one easy single game fixture. I think that's always going to be a big debate in FPL, but personally, I'm leaning more towards the one easy game. But at the same time, Man United tend to concede, and maybe you just want more potential save points from Vicario. So if this was my starting or my two goalkeepers, Onana and Vicario, maybe I would start Vicario just to have that final player in case Palmer finally misses a penalty or Nicholas Jackson decides to try to take the penalty himself away from Palmer and he actually succeeds this time and then misses the penalty, because that would obviously what would happen if Nicholas Jackson got to take a penalty rather than Palmer. So maybe I start Vicario. There's a good chance I have Petrovic in goal as well, but yeah, a lot of different things I can choose from here. Gusto Nuri, I really like Nuri for this game week. I really like him I quite like him at least for game week 37 as well, so I don't really mind having him. He's been really good for me. I have a lot of value tied into him, so he's still in my team currently, as is the case with Salah. I haven't completely disregarded Salah as an option, but obviously he's so expensive, so it's going to be really hard to fit him in to this team. But yeah, I just feel really bad about Salah and the way he's ended things with me in FPL. Hopefully he stays on for another season just to finish off on a high, rather than the whimper that he finished off with now, giving 30-35 or game 30-34. I think Liverpool actually will recuperate now a bit and basically put the league aside, put everything aside, and just try to finish off the season perfectly for Jurgen Klopp in his final season. So I think actually Liverpool and Arsenal will have some really nice games coming up towards the end of the season, and that's why it feels pretty bad that they don't have double game in 37, which means that I don't really consider their players that much. But yeah, I think especially Arsenal defenders are really interesting players to have. Kai Havertz as well is also someone that I wouldn't be too mad about someone having in their wildcard draft as well. So considering all of those guys, but it's been a lot of things to discuss this video. There's been a lot of things to go through. I've almost talked for an hour now, non-stop, so I should probably just end it there. But yeah, you can see my wildcard dilemmas there. It's going to be pretty similar to this team, but I don't know. I just feel like I want De Bruyne, and I want to just have him already and not have to book in a transfer to get him in, because he might be able to match Bruno Fernandes this game week as well. So yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you would do. There's also the final thing. If Haaland is fit to play, ready to play, it would be much easier to sell Jackson and just be able to bench João Pedro. That was basically my thought previously. If Haaland is ready to play against Nottingham Forest away, you could just start him, have João Pedro on the bench ready to play for game 37 in that double game week, and have some money saved up for potentially upgrading Gordon to De Bruyne, for example, or getting someone like Trippier in the future. So that might be what I end up doing if Haaland is ready to play for game week 35 already. And with that, that's it for me in this video. Almost 50 minutes, basically. I hope you enjoyed the content. I've been talking nonstop and haven't really stuttered too much in this video either. So pretty happy about the video overall. One of the biggest videos this season, basically, with double game week 34 in the past and a big wildcard game week in game week 35 coming up. So a lot of things to cover. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some useful information from this video. Hope you get to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. Bye bye, and good luck for the rest of the season, basically. Bye bye.